It's time to turn off the lights, turn up the volume, and grab some popcorn. I'm Aaron, and we're talking about horror today on Talking Points. So what's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Talking Points here on Triforce of Chaos. Today's episode is all about the horror movie genre. Now, we all have our favorite horror movie, or we all have our favorite series of movies. For me, it's the Alien series. I don't have any set items today up here because all of them are behind me. And I was going to use the Queen there, but she is just, yeah, she's heavy. And she likes to fall a lot. So, anyway, you know, we'll talk about some of the original horror films that really made the series what it is. We'll also talk about the horror movies that moved over into the sci-fi genre, because sci-fi was its own thing at one point. Horror became its own part, and now it's kind of almost side by side. It has to be the same thing with most sci-fi movies anymore. We'll also talk about the horror films that were based off of books, legends, lore, and mythology. And we'll also talk about games that were inspired by the genre. After that, we'll go with what everybody likes to hear, the fanswers for the talking points. So with all that being said, let's get talking. So first we'll talk about some of the original horror movies that were out there. Some of the ones that really made it. The first one was actually a 2-minute movie made in the late 1800s, like 1896 I believe, by some French guy. I can't pronounce his name. I'm not going to try that. I make horrible French accent voices whenever I try to do a French accent. So the movie was known as, well, it had a French name, but the English translation was The Devil's Castle. I actually sat down and watched this, and it was, for its time, I mean, you could see where it was a scary movie. It wasn't that scary, but you know, for 2 minutes it gave you what probably would have given a lot of people fear to begin with. After that, you started seeing more stuff by people who really read the older horror books. Like you had Frankenstein, Nosferatu, which later turned into Dracula, the werewolf, other movies like that. White Zombie then introduced us to the zombie subgenre, which, if you've never seen White Zombie, it was a great horror movie for its time. It came before the Night of the Living Dead, Day of the Living Dead. You know, the Living Dead series was, that kind of took inspiration from White Zombie, because I think White Zombie came out in the 30s or 40s. But it's really an amazing movie. It really introduced you to the concept of a zombie, and that's where we kind of get the word zombie. It's you know, I'm not going to go into the details of that. But anyway, after that, War of the Worlds introduced us to alien invaders. But before the movie, there was a novelization by H.G. Wells, I want to say, and then his grandson, or it's either his son or his grandson, Orson. I can never remember. But Orson Welles actually read this thing on the radio one time, and it brought panic. And he said, "Well, if I can do that, what can I do with the movie?" So Orson Welles helped kind of spearhead the movie project, which made this. It brought the book to life. You know. It brought us Martians, the first time we ever used the term Martians for anything other than, you know, just someone from Mars, you know, which they were from Mars, but, you know, it brought us the fear of aliens. And that helped, you know, push the sci-fi genre into what it would become later on, you know, the horror sci-fi genre. Then we had Alfred Hitchcock, who brought us Psycho and Birds and just countless other movies that really kind of pushed that idea of what is fear and what makes us scared and what brings us all this, you know, just terrifying but terrifying, just everything out there kind of fear. So I mean, you know, Alfred Hitchcock, almost at H.G. Wells. Yeah, it's been a long week, but you know, well, it's only, you know, it's been a long week because I'm filming it. You know, like I said, we always film this on a Sunday, so, you know, I'm just rounding it wild week with a new week. So, you know, Hitchcock really brought us an awesome concept of the psychological horror genre. You know, psychological thriller, which thrillers are in and of its own a horror genre. You know, after that we got into, you know, and then after the atomic age, you know, which is now into the future, we have the sci-fi horror genre, which really took off with the forms of aliens, robots, or mutants. All three of these different character types really pushed that fear. You had the Aliens and Prometheus series of movies, which have really pushed the concept of an alien being something other than bipedal, looks like a human, walks like a human, talks like a human. Typical of most sci-fi movies where the aliens have more human features than anything else. These aliens could take on the shape and build of their host. Yes, they had human features, or yes, they had the features of the host, but it kind of reignited that what is an alien thing. You know, Prometheus kind of built upon that by saying, okay, these engineers are human looking because they created humanity. There we have the concept of panspermia, which is, you know, again, sci-fi. The Predator series gave us a humanoid looking alien, of course, but its sole purpose was to hunt humans, and it would hunt anybody. It didn't care who it was. They brought fear because they hunted down the characters to the point where only one character survived. War of the Worlds. Again, we're going back to War of the Worlds. An Invasion of the Body Snatchers introduced us to an alien that near about destroyed the Earth. You know, they invaded. You know, there are other examples out there. There's well, the Blob, for instance. That one actually takes a lot of inspiration from the sci-fi horror genre. There's Dreamcatcher, which also has an alien that's infecting humans and using them to basically bring about his own method of madness. You know, he's basically controlling these human puppets to get his message across. Night of the Living Dead and other movies introduced chemical agents. You know, you had Night of the Living Dead, you had just countless other ones that introduced either a bacterial or chemical, something that changed these humans. 28 Days Later is a good example of just reanimating the dead, who would then decimate the population, and it brought fear because you had these shambling corpses and they're killing people and blood and guts and all that. You also have Apollo 18, which takes us back to why we stopped going to the moon. Maybe, you know, they're saying maybe that was the reason. Lawnmower Man kind of brought in the virtual reality concept and the AI, where basically humans had tampered with it so much that now this AI powered, controlled everything computerized and attacked people. It's a concept that shows that what we fear can be made into something as entertainment. And then, you know, we have the movies that were all based on books. For instance, you know, we have the works by Stephen King, Bram Stoker, Mary Shelley, and other artists out there, other authors out there, who really brought us characters that we became scared of. I mean, for instance, Stephen King gave us Pennywise. Pennywise, for all of you, you know, people that are afraid of clowns, Pennywise was the clown to be afraid of. He was an alien shapeshifter, if I remember the story correctly, that came to Earth, and I never watched Stephen King stuff. I mean, I've read some of his books, but his movies always were the movies based on them were always kind of out there for me. But Pennywise was one of those characters that people still are kind of terrified of at a young age, and then it kind of helped spur that, you know, keep the fear of clowns going. We see a lot of influence from H.P. Lovecraft as well, with most of his books being used to create, you know, for instance, the Elder Gods and the Cthulhu series of books from the Necronomicon stuff. You see a lot of that influencing other movies, like Evil Dead uses the Necronomicon. There's countless ones that use it, and I've seen some smaller film adaptations of that stuff. Even fanfics have been made, which they're all considered movies in my book. Just because it's not made by Universal, Warner, Fox, all of those, doesn't mean it's not a movie to me. I'll watch anything, to be honest with you. Then you have mythology. Mythology really kind of pushed that. I mean, you've seen a lot of it. You've seen stuff with the Loch Ness Monster. You've seen stuff with the Yeti, leprechauns, trolls. Everything out there has had some influence on the horror movie genre. Movies based on real life incidents and books written about real life incidents. We have the Amityville Horror, which, if you've never seen that, it really does kind of, it's psychological as hell, but it's still a horror movie because, you know, people are being attacked and killed and all that. You've got The Exorcist. You've got movies based upon like UFO abductions, like Fire in the Sky, for instance. Fire in the Sky really kind of told the Travis Walton story in a horror perspective of him. You getting to see him be abducted, be tortured, go through all this stuff that happened in his eyes and what happened during that time. We really don't know because it was one of the more popular abduction stories. So we get a lot of alien abductions. We get a lot of real life events that have happened that really kind of push that. Is there something out there? What's causing this paranormal activity? So I mean, it's really awesome to see that books being transferred into these movies and all this other stuff just kind of coincide together. So, you know, now that we've talked a little bit about books, let's move on to the games that have been inspired by horror movies. First thing that's going to come to mind with y'all is Dead Space, Resident Evil, you know, other series out there, Doom. All of these were inspired by some form of movie. Doom, some, you know, more or less like the summoning of evil spirits and opening gates to hell kind of movies. Resident Evil was all about the zombies. Dead Space, you could see influences from movies like Alien. Metroid had an influence from Alien. Contra had Alien as an influence as well. I mean, there were so many influences from sci-fi horror and just horror in general. Yeah, you got Slender, which came from, you know, the concept of, you know, or you got Slender Man, whose concept itself came from probably Blair Witch Project and other concepts, to where you get a faceless, shapeless, well, not shapeless, but faceless human who's coming to take people away. You've got other, you know, you see these influences in the games. You got Last of Us, who takes a lot of influence from movies like 28 Days Later and other zombie movies, but at the same time gives you somewhat of a bacterial or fungal infection that causes this. Five Nights at Freddy's obviously takes a little bit of influence from, you know, the spirit possession of machines or AI going out of control, like in Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey. Even though it's a sci-fi movie, the robot killing people concept came from 2001: A Space Odyssey. Fatal Frame, for instance, another good game that lives off of the horror genre. It's all about, I mean, you can see where it got its inspiration from Blair Witch Project and other movies based on that survival perspective from the character's view. You know, that mockumentary or almost like live action found footage kind of movie. You know, it's you can see where a lot of these things get their inspiration from. So, you know, that's pretty much it for games that I could really think of that built off the horror. You know, you have the AVP games, you have all of that stuff like that as well, but they're kind of self-explanatory as where they get their idea from. AVP, the Alien games, the AVP games, the Predator games, all of that got their basis off of that. You know, you see horror movies inspiring some fighting games like Mortal Kombat, with actually adding in their horror characters like Michael Myers, Freddy, Jason Voorhees. They even added the Alien and the Predator in recent editions. So, you know, you do see where horror movies bring in that gory, gotta fight it texture that games like Mortal Kombat feed off of. Anyway, I mean, that's pretty much it for all of that, so we'll move on now to the talking points. Last week we asked you, the viewers, what was your favorite horror film or series? For our first answer, we got Emily, who writes Nightmare on Elm Street. Travis writes either Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, or Thunder in Paradise, which was pretty scary. I never saw Thunder in Paradise. I have seen Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th, so I don't find them scary. I find them more or less funny. You know, that's me. What scares me more is, you know, something popping out of someone's chest, or something jumping out of an egg and latching hold to someone's face, or an alien that's stalking you and you can't see it. You know, movies like not Outlander, it might have been The Outlander. Yeah, there was a movie called The Outlander, not like the TV show Outlander, but there was a movie that was based upon this, like, he was like a time-traveling human who ended up coming to Earth in the past, lands on Earth, and brings along with him this alien that he was that had wiped out pretty much, this alien race that pretty much tried to decimate the human species from this colony they lived on. You know, I like stuff like that. So Nightmare on Elm Street and all that, yeah, they're great horror movies. I can't get into them. Nicole actually writes Halloween and Puppet Master. I've seen Puppet Master and I've seen Halloween. Again, both of those really just, I don't know, I can't really find them scary. Cubby, who's one of our newer answers for this week, thanks Cubby for answering, writes Rawhide Rex. Never seen it. Again, I don't know much of these movies, but I'm gonna have to start looking at some of this stuff, y'all. Y'all got me interested by giving me some of these answers, so thank you. Bobby writes, I don't think these were considered horror, but Resident Evil series, hands down. They are actually a horror genre because they're zombies. Zombie is part of the horror genre, so yeah, Bobby, they are a horror film, and they are an awesome series. You know, people kind of knock them for being in the Resident Evil family, but I think they're still pretty awesome. Jen writes, a book, as always. Thanks, Jen. She writes, haven't seen many horror movies, but I'm not really a fan of them. But I have seen the Alien and Aliens movies, and they're okay. They're more than okay. They're masterpieces. I'll never say they're just okay. Not to me, not to this fan. And even though the following aren't really, and then she goes back and says, and even though the following aren't really horror, they are still scary and creep the shit out of me. The old Charlie and the Chocolate Factory movie, Casper, Indiana Jones trilogy, Young Sherlock Holmes, and the Batman movie that came out a few years back with the Scarecrow bad guy in it. That was, God, I'm horrible with this. I can never remember which movie had what character in it, but I know which Batman she's talking about. Or just any other really strange, creepy, odd, fucked up movie. Yeah. They're not horror movies, and I can see what she means, though, that, you know, for someone who's not used to watching stuff like that, it does have that horror aspect to it. I mean, think about it. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory was very odd and weird. Casper, that's a kid's movie. That's not really horror, but I can see where, you know, ghosts popping out and all that. Indiana Jones, yeah, you can see the, you know, guy reaching out and grabbing the guy's heart and crushing it. Yeah, I mean, I can see that concept. Young Sherlock Holmes, I don't see the horror in that. But anyway, the Batman movie, Scarecrow is meant to be kind of a horror character in some ways, and just, you know, kind of bring out that fear and what made a horror movie. But anyway, we'll move on to our next answer, which is Jimmy, who writes, any movie about a haunted house, especially since we moved into this farmhouse from 1885. 1885 is what I said. I almost said 19, but I wanted to clarify that. Random things turning on and off. Even had the kitchen door shut off right in front of me while drinking my coffee on the morning. Or one morning. Sorry, I'm wearing my contacts and yeah, they're starting to get a little dry, so bear with me if I read typos. You know, Jimmy, that does sound pretty interesting. I would be so, like, tempted to call in a young priest and an old priest at that point. Valony writes, any horror movie based on true events. It adds to the thrill, and I always have to research to find out what the story is based on. You know, I agree with you. Like I said, Fire in the Sky is a good one if you want to see it. Amityville Horror, or there's there's one where this guy, I'm trying to remember the name of it, and I'm gonna botch it up if I can't remember it. Basically, it's about a guy that does go through reoccurring nightmares of being abducted by aliens. I can't remember quite the name of the movie. It was based on a book as well, and I've been told I need to read the book, and I meant to get the book, but it had Christopher Walken in it, so you know, there is no cowbell added into that, but it's actually a good movie. I remember watching the movie, but I hadn't read the book, so it tells a true story event, and then there's, you know, there's movies that are based on that, like, you know, I'm drawing blanks on names already, but anyway, you know, thanks Felony for that fancer, and thanks to everybody for all your fancers today. We'll now move on to this week's talking point, which is, you know, it's all geared towards retro gaming, and I want to know, what is your favorite retro gaming system? For me, I enjoyed the old SNES, the NES, the Genesis, and even the PlayStation 1, which has now moved in, you know, since it's over 20 years old, it's now moved into the retro family. Yeah. I'm old. I played the Atari 2600 when I was a kid. I remember them graphics. They were terrible. But anyway, you know, what's your favorite? You can let us know in the comments below, or go to the Facebook and Twitter pages. Links for all that's in the description below. They all have, there you'll find the talking point for the week. Make sure you answer on there. And let us know, what's your favorite retro console, or what was your favorite retro console or gaming system, I should say, retro gaming system. Make sure you, and that's pretty much it for today's episode. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Check out our merch shop. We're working on some new ideas and new designs as we speak, so make sure you check out the store. Keep an eye on it. There will be new designs popping up here and there every once in a while. And thanks for watching, and as always, keep talking.
If you want to subscribe and check out all of our other videos, make sure that you click Spartan Lock. And if you want to see some other random video from Triforce of Chaos, click on the Master Chief.